I'm Afshin Rattansi. We're going underground on the eve of the 2020 US presidential election that will arguably decide the future of war and peace for the world. Coming up on the show. Will two neoliberal presidential candidates mean continued suffering both within and without the United States? Or will, as Noam Chomsky argues, a Joe Biden presidency open an avenue of influence for progressive policies that could heal centuries of exploitation, hatred, and American carnage? We hear from legendary political podcaster Jimmy Dore, plus the man who could have been giving counsel to a President Bernie Sanders, Philip Agnew, on why the world needs Joe Biden in the White House. All this and more coming up in today's Going Underground. But first, tomorrow, the United States goes to the polls to choose between 4 more years of Trump or an arguable return to the Obama years with Joe Biden, a choice with seismic global significance. Progressives, who have reluctantly supported Biden, have done so partly on the premise that once in power, he will divest from his decades of support for arguably draconian criminal justice policies, illegal wars, and his siding with big business, and move left. But not everyone thinks it'll work out that way. Jimmy Dore, comic and host of the Jimmy Dore Show, thinks it will in fact be quite the opposite. And he joins me now via Skype from his studio in California. Jimmy, thanks so much for coming on this important day. Angela Davis, that icon of resistance. Noam Chomsky, I know, you've read so much of his work. They say American voters need to vote for Joe Biden to kick Trump out. You don't agree?
Well, Joe Biden has a worse record than Donald Trump. Joe Biden was for the Iraq War. Joe Biden did Libya. Joe Biden did a genocide in Yemen. Joe Biden prosecuted whistleblowers. Joe Biden kicked 5.1 million families out of their house in a similar economic decline when he had the chance. Joe Biden opened the Arctic to drilling twice whenever Shaw asked. Joe Biden took us from 2 wars to 7. Joe Biden made the banks bigger. Joe Biden built cages that they're putting immigrant children in. Joe Biden gassed them at the border. Joe Biden bombed Muslim countries for 8 years straight, which is why there's a Muslim refugee crisis at the airports. And the only time the American people cared is when Donald Trump banned Muslims at the airport. They never bothered to ask themselves, why are there Muslim refugees at the airports? Because Barack Obama and Joe Biden just bombed them for 8 straight years. So the idea that Joe Biden is the antidote to Donald Trump when he has a worse record than Donald Trump is a mental gymnastic games that people have to play in their head because they can't stand Donald Trump being such a jackass on television.
That was when he was Barack Obama's vice president. What about Kamala Harris, first woman of color up to become vice president?
So after a whole summer of protests against police brutality, the Democrats have decided to nominate Joe Biden, who is the author of the 1994 crime bill, which exploded the prison population filled with mostly black and brown people in the United States. The United States is now the world's largest penal colony. We have 5% of the world's population, somewhere around 25% of its incarcerated population, thanks to Joe Biden. And then Kamala Harris was also a top cop here in California, and she was sued. She had a judge had to make her release people from prison because of the overcrowding. She refused that order 3 times until finally she said it was because if she released prisoners, it would upset their prison labor force. So these are the people who they say are the antidote to Donald Trump. This is crazy. Not only that, but before this election started, there were lawn signs saying, we just need a competent person for president. They can't even do that. Joe Biden has dementia. It's obvious to everyone, which is why he's not campaigning. And so they can't even give you a competent individual. They're literally giving you a guy who exploded the prison population, kicked people out of their houses, is guaranteeing you he's not going to ban fracking. He's not going to listen to the scientists. These are the people that they're giving as an antidote to Donald Trump. In many respects, they're worse.
They say they're proud of their records. Obviously, Biden in his campaign denies that he has dementia. But then you're saying that Donald Trump, given the practical situation we're in, is better than Joe Biden?
Well, I'm just saying his record isn't as horrible as Joe Biden right now. So what people love to say is you have to vote for Joe Biden if you care about immigrant children. Well, a study just came out that Donald Trump isn't going to come anywhere near the deportations of Hispanics that Joe Biden and Barack Obama did in their first term. And the reason why, it's because what I say on my show is I'd rather fight a wolf in wolf's clothing than a wolf in sheep's clothing. And that's what Barack Obama and Joe Biden are. And so it proves my point, because the study just came out. Barack Obama was the chief deporter. He deported more Hispanics. He built cages. He gassed immigrants at our border. He put children in cages. He built those cages. And people now are aware of that. People are now aware of our horrible immigration process and our policy. Why? Because Donald Trump is doing it. So now local law enforcement doesn't coordinate with the federal government anymore to help deport Hispanics. So that's why Donald Trump's deportation is a little bit better than half of what Barack Obama's deportation was.
And it is true that Trump has reduced the amount of caging. But okay, in 2016, we heard from WikiLeaks the sabotage of Bernie Sanders' campaign against Hillary Clinton. And of course, Clinton lost. This time, there wasn't any of those kinds of dirty tricks, were there, against Sanders or the candidate you would have preferred, Tulsi Gabbard?
Of course, the intelligence community, the Democratic Party, and the establishment media, the corporate media, of course, smeared Bernie Sanders left, right, gave him complete bogus coverage as usual, along with Tulsi Gabbard. And of course, what they did was they pushed this Russiagate, right? So that's been debunked here finally. They won't ever admit it. They just kind of ignore it and move on to another thing. But yes, the establishment, not only did they do Russiagate to try to smear and slander Tulsi Gabbard, which it worked, they did the same thing to Bernie Sanders. And Bernie Sanders is such a chump, he went along with it. He red baited himself during the campaign.
Actually, just on Sanders, because here in Britain, Jeremy Corbyn has been suspended from the Labour Party over an anti-Semitism controversy. Anything to suggest that Bernie Sanders was playing to anti-Semites, as he was accused of when he was running for the primaries for tomorrow's election?
Yeah, I think when it gets to accusing a Jewish guy of being an anti-Semite, I mean, that's just about as low as it can go. I mean, what most recently happened is Nancy Pelosi, who's the Speaker of the House here in the United States, the most powerful Democrat in the country, her daughter accused Andrew Yang of sexism because he referred to Nancy Pelosi by her first name. So that's how bad it's gotten. When neoliberals don't have a policy to run against, they smear you as an anti-Semite or a sexist. That's just par for the course.
But what about this idea of pressuring once Joe Biden wins? I mean, of course, Biden has flip-flopped on fracking, the existential crisis the earth has. Do you think, like Chomsky, that he can be lobbied heavier? Or Angela Davis said, he can be lobbied once he's in the White House.
Well, I don't know what Angela Davis, what history books she's been reading, but that's nuts. Joe Biden is going to move to the right. He's already said, promised, he's vowed he's going to veto Medicare for all, even if it passes the Congress and 80 to 90% of the people in the country are for it. He's already vowed to do that. And why did he vow to do that? Because he's in the pocket of Wall Street and the health insurance companies. His record is not ever being able to be moved to the left. His record is he moves to the right and then farther to the right. He's not moving to the left before he has your vote. The idea that he's going to move to the left after you voted for him is just nuts. It's immature. It's ridiculous. And we got to snap Americans out of this idea, because once Joe Biden gets elected, we just have another problem to fight. You know, what they're saying is that it's the equivalent of, I'm going to go buy a car after I give the car dealer all my money, then I'm going to negotiate the price and he's going to give me some of my money back. That never happens. Which is why Joe Biden's never going to move to the left, which is why these people have Trump derangement syndrome to think that Joe Biden is anything but an exact warmongering, fascist, neoliberal who's going to workers and take care of the billionaire class.
Joe Biden denies he's a fascist. Trump famously wanted some kind of rapprochement with Putin, only in so much as talking, given that they both have more nuclear weapons than any other countries on Earth. Biden says Putin must pay. Do you think there's an existential threat to the Earth if Biden wins?
Yes. I do. I honestly do. Joe Biden is a warmonger. He's been for every war I can ever think of. And he's even shamed people who spoke out and told the truth about the Iraq war. Joe Biden is proud about committing a genocide in Yemen. They dropped so many bombs in Syria, they ran out of bombs. So, yeah, Joe Biden, no matter who gets elected, is an existential threat. I say it's worse with Joe Biden because he has a worse record on war.
Nations involved in the Yemeni conflict deny it's a genocide. We asked Branko Markotic, author of yesterday's Man, the case against Joe Biden, about the presidential candidate. He said that Biden remains one of the least scrutinized presidential candidates in history. Why? Why do you think that's the case?
Because we only have 6 media companies in America, and they all work for the same handful of billionaire class people. And so they control the narrative in America. And the narrative is that Wall Street is happier with Joe Biden than they are with Donald Trump right now. So Wall Street and the military-industrial complex, they control the media. And so that's the message that gets pushed. That's exactly what's going on.
Well, I'm not going to ask you the so-called mainstream media question of who's going to win or whether Trump has a chance of winning.
I can tell you who's going to win.
Who?
Goldman Sachs and the military-industrial complex and the health insurance companies. That's who's winning. They've won every election in my lifetime.
But do you think it's very much on Biden and his shadow cabinet team payback for all the corporate donations?
Of course. Yeah, Joe Biden, and now, I mean, he kicked off his campaign in a fundraiser with a bunch of Comcast executives. Comcast, again, one of the biggest media companies in the world, right? One of the 6 companies in America that control all the media. They control NBC, MSNBC. So, nothing's going to change. Joe Biden is going to be a horrible corporatist. He's going to be an enemy of workers and students and the elderly. He is not your friend.
And let alone what happens to the workers of the United States. If it is Joe Biden who wins tomorrow, what advice would you give workers struggling in Venezuela, Bolivia, Syria, Belarus, any country that Washington and its state apparatuses don't like?
I would say be very skeptical, be aware, be afraid of any aid that the United States wants to send your people. Because when they do, that's always the guise of them trying to overthrow a socialist government and install a corporatist puppet regime of the United States. You know, Venezuela, when I found out, Venezuela has twice the amount of oil reserves as Saudi Arabia. I'm not twice, but they have more oil reserves than Saudi Arabia. When I found that out, I knew it was just a matter of time before the United States brought some democracy to their people.
And as for whistleblowers under a Biden presidency?
Well, if past is prologue, I mean, if we can look at the past, Joe Biden loves prosecuting whistleblowers. They use the Espionage Act in the United States, Joe Biden and Barack Obama, to prosecute whistleblowers, meaning people who were talking about blowing the whistle on crimes being committed by our government. They prosecuted them as traitors to our country and more than any other administration in history. And they tortured Chelsea Manning. Barack Obama and Joe Biden tortured Chelsea Manning. They ran a torture program that tortured a whistleblower. So if you think those guys are going to uphold journalism, you're nuts.
Jimmy Dore, thank you.
You're welcome.
After the break. Do Democrats deserve the votes?